Hey guys, what's happening? Thanks for tuning in and coming back and watching. I appreciate it. I hope you're staying safe and healthy out there. And if you're new here, I'm Jim. Nice to meet you and thanks for stopping by. I make tutorial videos here on YouTube showing how to use different software products to edit your photos, just to get creative, have fun, and just make photos that you like. Hopefully you like some of the tips I share today. In this video, I'm in Luminar 4, and one of the things I do is I like to shoot cityscapes, street scenes, things like that, especially in Europe when I've traveled over there. I like that quite a bit. And I like to shoot at the edges of the day where you get a little bit of shadow, a little bit of light from the city. And what I like to do is I like to try to create kind of romantic lighting in a photo. And you don't always get it. And so that's one of the beauties of Luminar is you have so much power and control over your photos. You can kind of create that. And that's what I'm doing in today's video. So I have this photo. This was something I took in Paris of this wonderful little restaurant and cafe over in Montmartre, if I said that correctly. Anyway, it's been shot to death, I'm sure, and I've got photos of it too. So the thing was, I took this photo, and this was shot like in 2016. So I was taking brackets. This was f/22 at like 10 seconds. It was kind of twilight, blue hour. There was no sunset or anything. So I was just getting the cafe, but I wanted to make it a little bit more dramatic. And I have to admit, even nearly 4 years ago that I took this photo, I've yet to get an edit that I really liked. Until now. Now I have an edit that I like, and that's because I went into Luminar and I just said, dang it, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to make this thing. I'm going to will this photo to be what I want it to be, because what I wanted was romantic lighting and shadow here and light there, and I wanted to balance the colors. No matter what I did in other products, including in Luminar prior to this edit, I just wasn't happy with it. And I think I've hit upon what has helped me, and I'm going to walk through that in this video. So here's the original photo, kind of blue, kind of bright, that sort of thing. Here's my final photo, which is I got better balance of color, less blue overall. I've got light and shadow where I want them, and I feel like I've created a bit of a kind of romantic, kind of moody look to the street scene that to me kind of gives off, I don't know, that romantic kind of moody look. And so I'm going to go reset my filters, and then we'll walk through how I got from that photo, which I like but was kind of boring, to that photo, which you can't really change the composition. I probably would do things different today, but it is what it is. But I like that edit much better than the base photo. Let me hit reset and let's get going. Okay, here we go. There's my base photo unedited. The first thing I'm doing is going over here to temperature, and I'm doing about a 20 actually. And then I'm going to hit enter. And for the tint, I'm going to do about a 26. That was the very first thing I did. For me, it was really too blue, and the buildings kept getting really blue and that sort of thing. And I like blue a lot, but I don't really want a white building to turn blue. And especially, and I'll get to this in a little bit, but I wanted to really have a fair amount of contrast in the photo, because to me that helps accentuate kind of that moody feeling where you have bright parts that are somewhat bright and then dark parts that are fairly dark. That contrast, I think, accentuates the overall look of a moodiness, if you will. So that's kind of the thing I'm doing here. I put in about a 32 for smart contrast. Highlights I took down -100 just because I was trying to get a little bit darker photo. And then shadows, I bumped those up about 37. And the last thing I did here is I went into advanced settings and I pulled up the whites by about 15. There you go. And so that was to pull back a little bit of the white in the buildings. And that was my first attempt at getting rid of some of the blue. I've got another attempt later that does a little bit more of it. But so far, I was like, okay, I did some basic edits on the light tool. It's not bad. I mean, is it good? No, it's from there to there. Too orange. I don't really like the color tones there, and still a whole lot to do. So next I went over to AI Enhance, and I'll just turn this on. You can see here, 28 on AI Accent, and Sky Enhance are about 41. So one more time, before and after. If you can tell, the light basically shifts. I made the sky darker and the foreground a bit lighter. And that's using both of the two sliders there in the AI Enhance tool. Really did a good job of helping me with that. Next was color, and I did quite a few things here, and that's because, truthfully, I didn't really like the colors in the image. Let me show you that one more time before. There we go. Kind of really too orangey yellow in front of the cafe, and the rest of it, especially the top half, the buildings in the sky, too much blue going on, and now a little bit more subdued oranges and yellows primarily, which is what I really like. So started here in the red, and you can see I took down the hue and I took down the saturation, but I bumped up the luminance. So I changed the hue to make it more kind of that candy apple red. I reduced the saturation because there was too much of it, but I brightened it, which is the luminance bump. Next, I went to orange, and here I just took the saturation down because if you remember, in front of that cafe, it was very orange, and it was just too orange for me, so I had to reduce that. And then I went to yellow, and I don't often use all three of these on the same image, but I felt like I had to here. So here again, saturation down, luminance up. And so as you can see, I'm kind of playing with these orange and red, these warmer tones that are primarily centered in the front of the cafe. And that was one of the things. Let me go back and show you. I didn't really like the color there. It was too kind of a weirdy orange yellow. I feel like I'm liking it better now, but I'm not obviously done with the photo. And also when I make other adjustments around the rest of the photo, the difference between those and the color I have now will, I think, help accentuate the color that I have in front of the cafe at this moment. So let me do that. And then the other thing I did was purple over here, and I just took down the luminance, -59. There was a little bit too much kind of purple going on. I wanted to reduce some of that saturation. Also impacted some of the stuff up here around the sign where it says Les Consolats, if I said that right. Let me turn this off again. There's the before color tool, way too orangey yellow, too much bright blues, that sort of thing. And after, a little bit more subdued. And that's the thing, it's like if I'm making a kind of romantic lighting, to me it's more about the lighting and less about the color. So I don't want to overdo, the saturation, that sort of thing, if I'm trying to create a little bit of that mood. So kind of what I was thinking about there. Next was I popped over here to the creative tab and I got mystical. Mystical is great, as you'll see here in a second, at adding like some contrasty kind of shadowy stuff. It creates some of that romantic moodiness that I've referred to in a lot of my videos, and I think helps add another dimension to the photo. So it really helps create a little bit of that mood. I went pretty high here with 57, but there's one more time. Before, a little bit brighter, a little bit less contrast and shadow, and after, more shadow. It's taking the areas that are a little bit dark and making them a little bit darker. And then, just creates a little bit of that contrast that I like. And then next I pop over here and I get Orton and basically bump that up as well. So here I went with Type 1 Orton, similar thing, about halfway, like 46, a lot more shadow and mood added. Now, the thing is, you'll notice here is the colors are starting to get off again. I think they're kind of getting a little too orangey there, and the building is not very white, it's really blue. I feel like I'm getting the light right, but I feel like I still need to kind of do some color work. So that's coming here in a moment. But first, when I go to the Pro tab, I'm going to go to Dodge and Burn. So this is just a super powerful tool, and I've got a video about it. I'll try to remember to link up there, but it allows you to paint in specific areas, either darker or lighter, and vary that amount. So you can do it multiple times within the same use of the tool. In other words, you don't have to paint a little bit to brighten an area and then add a layer, get the tool again, and then darken an area. You can do it again and again and again within this one instance of the tool on the same layer. So if you look, what I did is I darkened the sky and I brightened some of these other areas, also darkened some areas around the street. So just look around there and you'll kind of see what's happening. Created a little bit more mood, I think. And that's one thing I use Dodge and Burn for. Because it allows you to brighten and darken areas, you're basically creating contrast. And that contrast accentuates the mood. And so that's helping me create this romantic mood and this romantic lighting that I'm going for. So that was Dodge and Burn. Let me show you one more time. There's before. You can see a little bit darker over here, a little bit darker, I should say, before I turn it on. Before I used it, it was a little bit brighter in the sky, a little bit brighter around the street and some of the stuff in front of the cafe. And after, it's a little bit darker around those areas and a little bit brighter here in front of the cafe, which I think, again, is accentuating that difference between dark and light, creates that moodiness, and it's getting a little bit better feel. The colors are not great, so that's where I'm going to go over here to Color Enhancer. Let me turn this on, and you'll see a nice little shift in the colors there. So the first thing I did is I did Split Color Warmth, and that's basically because I wanted this warmth slider. I wanted to reduce the impact of the warm colors, so I took it left. And the cool colors I made a little bit to the right. So if you look at these colors, I went from that to that, and I think it helped me kind of subdue the saturation a little bit and reduce some of those colors. But there's another thing that's coming into play here, and that is color balance. So shadows, I didn't do anything in midtones. You can see I went, and this is odd for me because I like magenta so much, but in the midtones I actually went to the green a little bit. And that's because I was getting a bit of a kind of a purpley kind of look, and I didn't really want to do that. It's not the color I was going for here. I love that color. I use it all the time, especially in cityscapes and street scenes at this time of day, and also in sunsets. But for this one, I wanted to reduce it, so I actually went the other way in the midtones. And then in highlights, I did the same thing. And that's partly because up here, the lights were getting really kind of pinkish. So because they're highlights, I took that to the green, and then the yellow-blue, I went away from the yellow toward the blue. So let me turn this off again. And now you look at that, you see a little bit more of that pinkish kind of purple color. And then after, I think I've got an overall a little bit better, softer, more gentle look to the color. And a lot of that is how color balance gives you that interesting control over the different brightness levels, the shadows, the midtones, and highlights, and controlling colors within them. So I felt like at this point I was really getting happy, for lack of a better word, really happy with where I was. Because remember, I started with that fairly, to me, flat, kind of boring, that sort of thing, and the colors were a bit off. I feel like I've definitely got the mood amped up. It feels more like a twilight image where darkness is descending on the town. And that is this one, because it was a 10-second exposure, you know, I got the blurred people and that sort of thing, but also I've got a brighter picture because it's 10 seconds of light, you know, hitting the sensor. So here it's a little bit brighter. I've created a little bit more of that darkness mood, which I like, but there's one finishing touch, and that's using the vignette. And what I did is I put the subject over here around Le Consulat, and wow, brightened that quite a bit, as you can tell. So I took down the amount and size, changed the roundness and the feathering, and then inner light I bumped up a lot. That was 79, and of course I placed that there. And again, by placing the center there, you're saying that's the center of the vignette. So any changes I do are affecting the area around that, with that treated as the core, but also that's where the inner light is going to be applied. So if you look one more time, there it is before. It's kind of almost brighter around the edges and darker where the cafe is, and that's not the look I'm going for. I'm looking for this intimate kind of romantic scene at this French cafe, and I want that to be pretty well lit. And I want, as beautiful as this area is, and as gorgeous, and many of you have probably seen it and you know this, but you know, I don't want to focus on the entire street and how gorgeous it is. I really want to focus on that cafe. I wish there was a couple sitting there, but unfortunately there wasn't. But I wanted to brighten that a little bit and darken the rest, and of course Vignette does a great job of that. And as you can see, help me brighten up the core of the image, which is the front of the cafe. So I was looking at this now and thinking, I like this photo, but actually right before I started making this video, there were a couple of other things I wanted to do. So what I did is I went and added a new adjustment layer. And the first thing I did is I went into the light tool, and I got to look at my notes. So what I wanted to do is, this is again creating a little bit more contrast, and this time instead of adding the smart contrast filter, I'm using the whites and the blacks. So the whites I'm going to bump up about 10, and that's going to give a little bit more brightness to some of these wider areas around the buildings, which I like. And then the blacks, I'm actually going to go negative about 15, and basically just darken some of those areas that are already dark. Again, just kind of creating contrast, creating mood, and that was what I was doing there. And then the last thing was I went into color, and here I just took the blue down. I went into blue, I took the saturation down, and let me show you where I painted that, which is primarily around the tops of the buildings, and that was because I actually wanted to accentuate the white, which I did in the light tool. So I basically went in there, said less blue in these areas, painted that in. I actually did that one first, and then I come over here to the light tool and hit it with the whites just to pop that. And so this layer, as you can see, added a little bit more drama, and there it is. Totally fine picture, I think, and in fact, I like it quite a bit. And then after, a little bit wider in the buildings, because I still want some visibility. I don't want to totally negate the white buildings, but I wanted, you know, the whiteness helps them look a little bit better, and the reduction in the blue saturation in the buildings makes them more white. And so I just think it fit the scene better. But that's what that layer did. One more time, that layer before and after. Also the blacks took down some of those shadowed darker areas, made them a little darker. So here's my before photo, unedited except for the crop, that sort of thing. And my after photo, moody, romantic, nice lighting, got a nice little French cafe. You can just imagine sitting there with, you know, your friends or family or loved ones, whatever it may be, and enjoying like a nice coffee or something. And it just feels to me like a much more romantically lit scene There you go, one more time, before and after. And let me show you the slider. You can kind of see, I mean, how much darker the sky is, how much wider the buildings are, and how the light and color in front of the cafe is much improved to my eye. If you don't like it, that's totally fine. I like it a lot better because there it was too much on the yellow kind of orangey spectrum, and here it's still kind of orangey, but it's less intense in my opinion. Also the red, like in the Le Consulat, the awning that hangs over the front, if you remember, I moved the reds, the hue, and that made it a little bit more of that cherry red, which I kind of like. Maybe cherry red's not the right word, kind of a plum red or something. And the streets are much improved in terms of kind of reducing where your eye may go. I think with the light and color change, especially the light changes, you're more drawn to the center of the photo now than you were before. Whereas before, my eye kind of starts over there and kind of wanders and said, oh, that's cool, neat. Now I'm pretty much drawn in with all the light changes. And that's how I adjust romantic lighting in a photo or create that romantic mood. And again, every photo is different. So these are some examples of how I do things. But using the different tools in Luminar and masking and that sort of thing can really help you create that romantic mood and that romantic lighting scenario, which to me is areas of bright light and then areas of darker shadow. So instead of having something that's pretty evenly well lit, which is again because it was a tight aperture and a 10-second exposure, it's a pretty well lit scene. Now it's not, it's much more moody and romantically lit. That's how I go about it. And it was a lot of fun. I do appreciate you watching. Thanks very much. Feel free to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I'll be back really soon with more videos. And take care of yourselves out there, my friends. Have a great day, and I'll see you later. Adios.